Hey, happy Thursday, everybody. What a beautiful day today. And welcome to another Chamber Check-in episode from Idaho's only five-star accredited chamber. Today we get to learn about solar power with Lumio's solar energy consultant, Mr. David Manning. Hi, David.
Hi, Paul. Hey, good to see you. And yeah, happy Thursday.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that we have some blue sky and some that yellow thing showed up finally, and it seems like spring. And I love this weather. I love this temperature. And it's good to get out and about. And today, actually, a perfect day to talk about Lumio and what they do. So
Absolutely. I mean, with that big yellow ball of fire up in the sky there, I mean, the solar that's on my rooftop right now is just really cranking out the juice today.
I love it. So, David, you have been in and out of the chamber for many years through some different companies. And you're now our president of our ambassador program. And that's where I get to see you mostly.
Yep.
And you know, these episodes are really great ways of sharing our members' stories. And we've been doing it for 3.5 years now. And it's really important to me to help share our members' stories, their products, services, and most importantly, the people. I've made some great relationships, connected a
Yep.
lot of people over the years through this program specifically. I'm so glad to be able to feature Lumio and this new adventure for you. So, David, let's start off by talking about you a little bit. Bring us up to speed. Bring the listeners up to speed on your background and history of work that led you into Idaho, as well as your newest appointment with Lumio Solar.
Wow. Okay. What brought me to Idaho, actually, it was the military that brought me to Idaho. 40 years ago, coming up on 40 years ago, I joined the Air Force. And the Air Force moved me to Mountain Home, Idaho. And, when I first arrived, it was like, okay, I was married at the time. We traveled across country from Mississippi, and driving into Mountain Home says, okay, where are the mountains? And I was like, okay, what is that kind of like, you call the biggest guy in the room tiny or something, something along those lines.
Mountain Home.
Mountain Home, exactly. And, but it grew on us really quickly. And I spent 20 years in the Air Force, retired from the Air Force 20 years ago. And it was one of those, while I was in the Air Force, I was a ground radar I did ground radar operations and maintenance. Had good time. It was a great job. I traveled around a lot, deployed a lot, probably too much during that time. But during that time, also in the military, I finished my college degree in computer science and in management. And so after the Air Force, I went to work as a software engineer. Did that for a while. Was a project manager, worked in marketing research, was an IT architect at the Idaho Transportation Department and then Idaho Power. So I bounced around a lot of different things. I went into business for myself a couple of times, worked in different companies around the Treasure Valley. And during that time, I started working in the solar industry. Oh gosh, probably 7 years ago. I was working with a local company called Solar Cascade. Did mostly commercial and utility scale solar. And then that spun off. We wound that one down and spun up a manufacturing company to manufacture bifacial solar panels. It ran into some problems with the investor group and whatnot. And so it's like, well, okay, I think now it is restarting in the Phoenix area, trying to get started back up. But during this time, I learned a lot about the industry, about solar, from pretty much all aspects. I was involved in installation, sales, manufacturing, really got to learn a lot about it. And then I was with a company, UMA, doing phone sales for business phones. And left UMA back in the end of last summer. And I found an opening at Lumio. Lumio was just starting up an office here in the area. and I signed on with. I think I was the first person to sign on with Lumio in the area.
Lucky them.
Yeah, and and so I've been with Lumio since.
Awesome, David. Well, first of all, thank you for your 40 years of service in the military. I can't even imagine the being
20 years.
20 years.
20 years, yes.
Of service and being out at the Mountain Home Air Force Base is incredible. That you were there, and now you're in Boise and working for Lumio. So tell us about Lumio. What is the organization? Tell us a little bit about the origin story, and where do they serve? Are they national, global? Bring us up to speed on them.
Absolutely. Well, I think right now, the last time I looked, Lumio was counted as like the 5th largest solar company nationwide. So we are a national company. And it started off, actually, Lumio started off about 3 years ago when there were 3 regional solar companies across the country that merged together and bought 2 other companies in Texas and Florida and brought them all together and said, okay, we're going to merge all these companies together and rebrand as the name Lumio. Now, the company from that group of 5 that I'm most familiar with was called Smart Energy Today, and it was based in Tumwater, Washington, and it served mostly Pacific Northwest. And it's interesting because people ask us, wait a minute, Tumwater, Washington, Seattle, Tacoma area, it rains a lot there. It's like, they have solar? Actually, they have a lot of solar. Over the 13 years that Smart Energy Today that they were around, they installed thousands and thousands of installations in that area around the Puget Sound. And people said, but it rains a lot. It says, well, you know what? It rains a lot in Germany too. But here's the thing. If you go to Germany, about 30% of the houses in Germany have solar on the rooftop. And it's like, yeah, it rains. It works just fine. I mean, the panels are mostly made out of glass, so they are waterproof. They don't really have a problem with that. And really, a lot of people say, well, you don't get much daylight on it. And what most people don't realize is that photovoltaic solar energy is triggered by UV light, not sunlight. And just as you can get a sunburn on a cloudy day when you can't see the sun, those panels they're collecting energy from the UV light that comes down. And so, yeah, rainy, cloudy day, yeah, it's diminished somewhat, but it's still working just fine. It's still producing energy. But anyhow, listen, Lumio formed together. All these companies formed together to make one big company. And anytime you merge companies together from disparate areas you're going to have problems. We were no different. Lumio was no different. We had some difficulties getting started. We had some difficulties internally. Those have been really worked on diligently. One of the things, our CEO, Greg Butterfield, a few months ago, we had an all hands conference call, Zoom call, and he was describing our focus. And he says, as individuals at Lumio, every person here, our theme this year is ownership. Own everything. Problems that come up, own it. Issues that come up, own it. And it's like, that's how we're going to develop as a company. And one of the things they decided is we don't want to subcontract out work. A lot of solar companies will sell the system and everything, and then they subcontract it out for the installation, whatever they do, a hands off. Lumio is like, no, we're doing everything in-house. From first contact, the 30 years down the road, with full support, everything is being done in-house. The installers are in-house. Our electricians, they're Lumio employees. They work for us. Every aspect of it. And we said, well, that's really important because from a customer standpoint, you want to know who you have building a relationship with, especially if it's a long-term 30, 40-year relationship that you're having with a company. You want to know that that company is there and who you're dealing with, not having to chase other people around. I talked with a lady here recently that she got solar at her home about 3 years ago, and it stopped working. And then she couldn't find the person that sold it. She couldn't find the installer. And she said, "What do I do?" And I said, "I don't know." And I said, maybe, if you can get the manufacturer for the items, if you can reach somebody there, as long, hopefully it's not just an 888 number. And I said, really, it's a difficult situation, but it's all too common. It happens entirely too common. It gives the entire solar industry a bad name.
Okay.
And I'll be the first to admit that as an industry, it's a bad name that was earned because of practices like this were so common. That's one of the things Lumio is determined to say, we're going to change that reputation, even if it's just with one customer at a time. As a matter of fact, like I said, our CEO, Greg Butterfield, one of the things he said is that as an industry, forecasters are predicting that there will be a growth in revenue in the solar industry of 26% in 2023. Expect company growth 26%. However, he says, we are not going to grow that fast. We're slowing it down. We're going to throttle back because anyone can chase numbers if the numbers are there. But in chasing those high numbers, what kind of service are you giving your customer base? And he said, instead of growing so fast, we're going to focus our efforts in giving our customers the best customer experience they can have when dealing with solar. And he said, that was the commitment that we made as a company. And he said, so we're going to slow it down. We're going to intentionally slow it down for that reason, so that we can focus on giving better and superior customer service. And I know a lot of people say, well, why don't we go for the higher number? But I personally, I think that's great. I think it's a great approach. It's a good, sustainable, long-term approach to business.
Well, I like hearing the mission and vision of companies and organizations that are more about being credible, about doing the right thing when no one's looking, as well as providing a service that's serviceable. And I love what you said, whoever you're going to call, hopefully it's not a 1888 number, and you get somebody on the other end of the line, because that's important to me. It's important to this Treasure Valley. It's important for businesses to exceed expectations and execute with excellence. I think that's important that you brought that up.
Well, that's one of the, you brought that up. This in the Treasure Valley there. One of the things that I like that Lumio did, they didn't bring a bunch of people in to start wearing this. The goal was hire local people who are local people here. And so he said, yeah, okay. So we have people that moved here for Lumio, but most of us are people that have been here a long time, most of our lives, if not our whole life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they do that everywhere they have expanded Lumio's presence. They've carried that same process to do that. It's like Lumio has a thing that says, we're building solar energy from the town up. And that's kind of what that means. Everywhere we go, we hire locally and develop talent locally.
I love it. All right, David, what does Lumio offer? Are we talking just residential? Are you talking commercial? Is it to run your garden? Is it for? Tell me about what the services are.
Yeah, right now our focus entirely right now is on residential solar. We are looking at long-term there. Of course, we'll probably expand into other areas. We want to really refine one thing first. Get it right. Get all of our processes right. Get the customer service up and running the way that we want to our standards. And then we can look at branching out into other areas. I mean, there's a potential there, but let's get the first thing right first.
Okay. I love it. With Lumio being a national company and probably having some additional resources to help grow, and especially here in the Treasure Valley, what are some of the misconceptions that you've heard over time being in the solar industry for almost a decade? Um, Help me understand what those misconceptions are, because we always get phone calls, we get door ringers
Yep.
for solar. People are walking around, so you never know what to trust. So tell us a little
Yep.
bit about.
And we're going to have a lot of door ringers, door knockers there. Yeah. Every company use them. And, but really, it's one of these things there where I hear people saying, oh my gosh, it's too expensive. Well, it used to be when I did solar before commercially and utility scale back then, as far as residential solar, banks really wouldn't touch it. So if somebody wanted to get solar, they had to find their own funding. One of the things that's changed over the last few years to make it a lot easier is there's been a number of basically there are solar banks, renewable energy banks that have come into existence. We have several that we work with that that they're federally funded, federally insured, and that is their only business. They only work in renewable energy to fund projects for that. It's made it a lot easier for homeowners, for the average homeowner. I've heard a homeowner say, well, we don't use a lot of power. My average power bills, is $60 a month is what I have on the average. We don't use a lot. And it's like, most of our residential customers have power bills between $50 to $100. And it's like, hey, that's great. You got to say, that means you're not using a lot. It means it's a much smaller system, which is great because if you want a bigger system, you have to have a lot of roof real estate to put those on.
Okay.
Smaller system, we can put it on a smaller footprint and you can still get the benefit from that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I hear about it there.
So that initial cost to get started with the setup, the panels, the install, and I would assume there's a battery that has to be charged.
We're not doing batteries, at least not here. One of the things that and people ask me about batteries a lot. And I do tell them, says, well, look, here's the thing. Says the Idaho power grid is very reliable. It's very stable. You might have 1 hour outage once every 10 years. It's not my decision, but I have to ask the question, is it worth spending an extra $15,000 to $20,000 on batteries for 1 hour outage every 10 years? Not yet. Now, if things change, then okay, relook at it. But initially, it's like, yeah, it's really it doesn't make dollars and cents sense.
Okay. I'm glad you explained that to me. When folks are investing in solar, what types of things will they experience from Lumio? And we only have a few minutes. I'm going to put your website scrolling on the bottom of the screen. And this conversation, actually, I'd love to have it more. And maybe you could speak to our members more about solar and the renewable resource, because every city is trying to diversify their energy. Even, power companies, utility companies are looking at different ways of diversifying the way they serve their customers. And solar is one of them. So
Idaho Power is actually investing quite a lot into solar.
Yep.
They really are. But initially, it said when somebody decides they want to go solar on it there, they meet with somebody like me there to first figure out, does it make sense? And put together a preliminary design. It's a collaborative process. And then we help them through the whole stage, the financing of it, the project, everything on it there. It's zero down. There's no money up front. Once we figure out go through the various financing options to figure it out, set up a payment plan through one of the solar banks is most common. And then we take care of the permitting process, the inspection process, the engineering work. Our installers come out on a scheduled day, and they typically show up sometime 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're usually done by late afternoon.
Wow. They
have everything on there. It's in place. And then it goes to a final inspection by the city and with Idaho Power to put in a bidirectional meter. And so the power you're producing is red, and the power you're consuming is red.
So it's an enhancement as well to what you're already getting on the grid.
But absolutely.
Can it run an entire home?
I do. I mean, the solar, I tell people, says, I power my house, my car, my neighbor's outdoor lights.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can. And now it depends a lot on the home and the usage. That's why we have to do the analysis and work with the homeowner there to figure it out, to figure out what's the right design and what's feasible.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely.
Well, if anybody's in the market to learn more importantly, to learn and get educated about solar,
Sure.
call our friend David Manning. I really love working with you, David, through our ambassador program. Thank you for your investment with the chamber through Lumio and with UMA as well. We love the partnership. Thank you, David.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Absolutely. Enjoy this beautiful weather out there, and
Yep.
I look forward to our next conversation.
All right.